Okay, the live stream is getting set up. I will get us started just as soon as it goes. Okay, all right, so here we go. I'm gonna get us started. The live stream is getting set up. Oh, it's playing my voice. Hang on. Don't want that. Okay. All right. So here we go. I'm gonna get us started. Okay. That would be creepy, having to listen to myself the whole time. Okay. All right. So welcome. It looks like we've got, a handful of people here. I'm sure more will join us at any point. As you join, feel free to say hi in the chat and say who you are. Hopefully at this point, you know who I am. Amanda Goldman. I'm our Academy Coordinator for Leading Edge. With me, I have Laura Burial, who I will let introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Laura Burial. I'm the Teaching and Learning Director, so I get to work with all of the academies at Natomas Charter School.
And so tonight was always going to be about talking about getting ready for our transition to hybrid, which begins in the next 48 hours. And in the last 6 hours, it got a little more interesting. And about 45 minutes ago, you got an email from Dr. Wood, and you'll be getting one from me in the morning with a few more updates. And so I will go through all of those and try to answer all of your questions. As you can see on our agenda here, I think I'm going to try to go through a bunch of information at the start and then take questions after. So I appreciate if you guys will just sort of let me do that so that our folks that are watching remotely can get all that information. And then I'll make sure we have lots of time for questions. But here's our loose agenda. We'll talk about kind of updates, early hybrid days, hybrid learning, on-campus safety, and then what I've been calling August skills and April mindset. And so we'll talk a little bit about that and then take time for questions. Again, our meeting is being recorded and will be on YouTube. So if you don't want your picture to show up, just keep your camera off. We haven't had one of these meetings in about a month, but I'm sure at this point we kind of know the rules. We're here to support and learn from one another as a community, be mindful of talk time, but that doesn't mean don't talk. You please talk. But if you're not speaking, please keep yourself on mute so that we don't have any weird, crazy feedback going on. So with that, I will get started. So yay, I finally get to say this, but our kids are coming back to campus and this is super exciting. It's been a long time. It's been a year. And I don't think any of us expected that it was going to be a year, but it has been a year. And that means all sorts of things. And we're going to go through all the things that means. But we are so excited to be welcoming our kids back to campus. And if you've read your email, you know that we'll be welcoming them back 5 days a week, starting after spring break. So this is pretty exciting. I wanted to start with really grounding us in the same way that I grounded our staff when we talked about this. What are our mission critical objectives? When we think about our kids coming back to campus after a year being away from campus, what is really critical? Because we've got 10 weeks left, right? What's really critical in that time? And so I have 3 things that I want us to keep in mind as we underpin like everything that's going on for the remainder of the school year. One is really to help our students remember how to learn, and particularly remember how to learn in the way that we believe learning should happen at Leading Edge. So our thematic, pillar-based, project-based, collaborative learning. And the collaborative piece is big because that is not a skill they've had a lot of practice with in the last year. And so really that's our number one objective. How do we help them remember what learning, used to feel like and the way that they feel when they're learning that, in that way, which is the way that you and they have chosen. And that's why you're here at Leading Edge. That's number one. Number 2 is to meet the social and emotional needs of students who have been relatively isolated for a year. And that means really tending to relationships, community. It also means having a fair bit of grace and flexibility. And that's where we as adults can really come in strong and model what we hope to see from our students, because there's a lot of things that we don't really remember how to do. If you have had the opportunity in recent weeks to like have your first, social outing in a year, or have your first time gathering with people, it feels weird. It feels confusing. And so really having, our ability to support our kids through this, because our kids are still kids, and some of them are 11 and some of them are 14, but when they have stress or worry or anxiety about being in this new environment, they don't always know how to manifest that. And as I've already seen this week and last week, sometimes that doesn't come out with them being their best selves. So really, how do we meet their emotional needs and help them transition out of this isolation? And then the third and also, also significant component of this is help them practice living safely in our COVID world. I've heard people say we're in the post-COVID world, but we're not actually. Like, we are still very much in the world of COVID. And that means living in a world where we have safety protocols, where we wear masks, where we keep space from one another, where, we wash our hands maybe as much as we should have originally, but we didn't. And we need to practice living in this world because we're still there and we're still going to be there for a little while. And who knows, we might be there again. We don't know what's going to happen. We certainly didn't know this last year was going to happen. So really making sure that our students can still do what they do, but in this COVID safe world. With these three objectives in mind, here is our road forward. This is my really quickly assembled graphic. Sorry about that. So here we are at the go sign. Here's our road. You can see we're kind of moving towards next year. And the thing that I want you to see when we look at moving towards next year is that next year we are moving towards learning as normal, or as much as normal as possible. If you read Dr. Wood's email from 45 minutes ago, he talked about that we are unlikely to see distance learning legislation continue into next school year. And so we really want to make sure that we're ready for this to go away. We have what we need in place. So here we are this week and next week, where we're focusing on setting foundations for safe and comfortable learning before spring break. We're calling these our early hybrid days. We're making sure that every group has a chance to experience the on-campus experience as comfortably and safely as they possibly can. I'll talk more about that. Then we'll go on spring break. After spring break, again, if this is news to you, this email just went out about 45 minutes ago. After spring break, we will welcome all students who wish to come to campus onto campus 5 days a week. This is a change. I changed this slide about 3 hours ago. But because guidance from the California Department of Public Health has evolved over the weekend, we are prepared to say that we will come back from spring break 5 days a week. Anybody that wishes to be in person will have the chance to be in person. But also at that same time, extended distance learning will continue. So if for your student, the best fit is to continue to learn from home, you will still have that option through the end of the school year. We might try to convince you otherwise, but probably not. People need to make the choices that make sense for their family. So this will still continue. Late April, early May, there we go. Those two words are separate. Late April, early May, we'll see sort of our typical end of year things. It might be CASP testing. It might be some other form of testing. We'll see 8th grade portfolios. We'll see promotion. We'll see all of those things that happen at the end of the year. And hopefully as we get closer and closer to them, we'll have more opportunities to both, loop you all into the plans, but into the plans and the planning, but also have the state kind of open up a little bit more. So we have some more options there. And then, like I said, the goal is to get to normal by next school year. So today we're going to talk a little bit about these early hybrid days. We're going to talk about what I'm calling the 5X hybrid, the 5 days a week hybrid will look like. And we'll talk about campus safety. So early hybrid days. So the what and the why. I'm going to start with the why. And I've sent this out via email, but I want to talk about it a little bit. We took a very different approach to these days. We took this go slow to go fast approach. There's no shame or no shade to anybody else who made a different choice, but we at Leading Edge made this choice for a couple of reasons. We heard from our students, along with their excitement about coming back from campus, they were showing a fair bit of fear, anxiety, discomfort, and they were showing up with that in different ways. They were either just telling us that or externalizing that behavior in other ways. We know that early experiences with our students who came onto campus for learning hubs showed us that if we didn't really re-norm for them, how do they learn together? They didn't really know how to do it anymore. I mean, and I'm actually not going to talk about students, I'm going to talk about teachers for a minute, but we had a moment in January, we had all the teachers on campus. There were 12 of us in a room, and I had pieces of paper out in the middle of the room, and I said, okay, everybody stand up and go get a piece of paper. And they were totally paralyzed, right? Wait, who goes first? What order do we go in? How, stand up and get a piece of paper. Wait, am I allowed to, and these are the adults in the building, right? And so we've seen in that, plus our work with our hub kids, that it takes some work to do that renorming of learning together. May or may not know, but more than 40% of our leading edge students have never been on campus because we have all of our sixth graders and we have a considerable number of new seventh and eighth graders. So that's a very different percent than in some other places. And what we know from our research and from our experience is that like the stronger we can make that foundational learning experience, the greater long-term capacity to learn and adapt and be ready for what comes next. And so, and then lastly, like we're a small team. So if we're going to provide this level of support, sometimes we have to be a little creative in how we do it. So that's the why for these early hybrid days. As you probably know by now, what they're going to look like is that each cohort, each group of students will get kind of their special time between now and spring break to have their like special day where they're going to get some really concrete safety training from me. They're going to get some social time with their peers. They're going to get undivided attention from their teachers on campus. The distance learners who are choosing to remain on distance learners will also get some undivided attention so that they also get some of that level of support. And practicing with the web leaders today, it was really fun to sort of see how they responded. And I think that this plan is going to really give them that solid foundation that they need to move forward to coming back after spring break and having that readiness. So if you're not sure when your child is coming to campus between Wednesday and next Tuesday, here's the quick list. You also got you and your student both got a personalized email individual with like, this is exactly your details. And so if you're still not sure, by all means, email me. But I think most people at this point know. Do we have any questions about this part before I move on to sort of the next piece?
I don't see any in the chat.
I'm giving my good wait time. Mm-hmm. Okay. So then the next thing I'm going to go on to talk about is hybrid instruction. And probably part of your like, wait, is it still considered hybrid because aren't all the kids coming? And so we're still going to call it hybrid because remember, some of you have chosen distance learning for your child and they will have the opportunity to remain on distance learning. So for our purposes, hybrid just means some of the kids are on campus and some of the kids are not. Our numbers at Leading Edge, depending on the grade, are about in 6th and 7th grade, it's about 70% of the students are choosing to come to campus and about 30% of the students are choosing to stay home. In 8th grade, it's a much smaller percentage choosing to stay home. It's closer to like 15, 20% that are choosing to stay home and about 80% are choosing to come to campus. So some key understandings. Our main goal of hybrid instruction, like I started with at the beginning, remember how we learn. Projects, pillars, collaboration. Lots of things are staying the same. Our bell schedule is going to stay the same. Our classes are going to stay the same. Schoology will look very much the same. Hopefully, as much will stay the same as is possible. We will have stable cohorts, though I've learned that is no longer the right word. I'm supposed to call it stable groupings. I thought I changed all my cohorts to groupings, but you'll excuse me. And so what I want you to think of, oh, see, I thought I fixed everything on this slide. All right. So what you're, I'm actually going to escape out of here and change it so that I don't confuse anybody. Hold on one second. So it's not supposed to say cohorts. It's supposed to say groupings. And their homeroom pod is like, there we go. Okay. All right. So, okay. Stable groupings. Students have what's called a homeroom pod. And so whoever's in their homeroom, they actually will travel to all of their indoor learning time together. So all their classes, if they're in a classroom, they're with that pod. And depending on which homeroom it is, that pod is anywhere from 15 to, like, the biggest one is 24 students. Students may mix with other members of their grade level at breaks and at lunch, but it'll only be their grade level. And at those times, they would only be outside. So think about it as, if they're inside, they're with their pod. If they're outside, they're with their grade level. And then the other key thing about hybrid instruction is that we will still have our periods and our same bell schedule. The first part of every class period is a little bit of synchronous with both our roomies who are here at school and our Zoomies who are at home in the meeting together. But that's only going to last for a very short time, maybe 10, 15 minutes, at which point the teacher in the room is going to keep teaching and supporting the roomies, the kids on campus. And the Zoomies, our extended distance learner folks, will have the support of a distance learning facilitator or instructional aide or some other support. They will still continue to have access to the teacher, but not in that, like, immediate, I'm right here with you in the meeting sense. This says pretty much the same thing. I just sort of said it a different way. But students attend school and work directly with teachers every day. Students who have chosen extended distance learning will attend their classes via Zoom. But if you've chosen hybrid learning, you're here, you're with us on campus. If you are a student who is learning from home, you have a lot of teacher access during those office hour time periods. If you're a student who's learning from class, you have your most teacher access when you're here in class. We have our distance learning facilitators and instructional aides who will be working with everyone to sort of keep the whole big picture going. As of today, the question of what will Wednesday look like is a question, and it is still a question, and it does not have answers just yet. I should be able to send out communication with answers on that by Friday is my goal. But learning will occur on campus on Wednesdays. The structure and the details of Wednesdays, to be determined. They will probably be some sort of later start, so we can still have that staff time. But like I said, I will try to have that to you by Friday or Monday at the latest. But that's my goal. That's my goal. And we'll, of course, send it out via email, and we'll review it with students in class so that they know what to expect on those Wednesdays. PE. So PE will be held primarily on the blacktop and the field. They won't be doing any physical activity indoors. So if they're in the gym, it's because they're doing, like, journaling or meditating or something like that. Students are not going to have access to the locker rooms. So please be prepared for some slightly stinkier than usual middle schoolers. Oh, well. So and more importantly, on the days that they have PE, so that's Mondays and Thursdays for 7th and 8th graders. 6th graders, it's Tuesdays and Fridays. Make sure they're wearing stuff that they can do PE in. Masks will be required during PE, except during, like, periods of super heavy physical and indoor exertion when students can be adequately spaced out. There will be limited equipment sharing. Equipment will be sanitized regularly. And this sentence doesn't quite apply quite as much. Our current sports conditioning hubs will expand after spring break, so you'll be seeing more opportunities for students to get involved in sports, including kids who were not in sports in the past. At this point, we don't anticipate any league play, but we might do some inter-squad and intra-squad play. But just given the conditions of our league, we don't anticipate any league play this year. All right, before I move on to safety, any questions about instruction? Okay, I'm going to go on to safety. And what I've done, okay, well, I will tell you guys what I've done in a second. So first I have some information that you've seen before, right? That, and I'm going to go over it very briefly, but the very short answer to all the stuff that's on these slides is that from the beginning of this whole crazy everything, we've been doing two things. We've been following the guidance of our Sacramento County Public Health Department. So we do what they tell us to do. And we've been really trying to stay true to the science, and we're trusting that they are providing us, with the best up-to-date information. And the nice thing is that in January and February, we got a lot of guidance and information from the CDC, from California Department of Public Health, and from our own Sacramento County folks that really suggested that there were a lot of ways to make coming to school safe. And I think we see that as the guidance has evolved to this from 6-foot physical distancing to 3-foot physical distancing that the CDC just released on Friday. We've seen that science evolve. And then we've also seen local schools in the area who have been in person, for quite some time in other counties, and they haven't seen any on-campus transmission to the best of their ability to track that. And so that's really promising. Here are all the protocols that California Department of Public Health expects us to have in place for schools to reopen. And except this should say 3-foot now, but expects us to have in place for schools to reopen. And they've actually been in place here on campus for quite some time. But instead of going through all of this, what I'm going to go through with you guys is the student language that I'm going to use to talk to students about these things. And hopefully that kind of translates a little bit to what exactly are we talking about when we talk about all these things. So from a student speak perspective, physical distance, make sure there's enough space between you at all times. And the guidance is 3 feet. So our students in classes will be spaced 3 feet apart. And then that's kind of what we're looking for when they're outside and they're moving around and they're with one another. Stable groups, and we talked about this, a consistent group of people that you're around at all times. In this case, it's their pod, that homeroom group, who they have all their classes with. And if they're with anyone else, it means they're outdoors, still masked, still distanced, but outdoors with that adequate ventilation. And even that is limited to their grade level peers. So there's a couple questions that are starting in the chat. I'm going to go through it all and then I'll come back to those questions. Safety protocols, again, student speak, masks. Masks are on correctly pretty much all the time. The only time your mask should come off is when you're eating or drinking. And like we said, for very, very strenuous physical activity. So otherwise masks are on. Kids have been doing that on campus for a while now. They're actually quite good at it. And I think I've told you all, my 4-year-old does it, and he even forgets that he's wearing his mask. We're going to send some awesome screen at home little cards for you guys. This is a really big part of your job as parents, is to make sure you're not sending your child to school sick. And so, we say when in doubt, sit it out, or don't come to school sick is the short answer, right? And so making decisions as a family for how are we going to make sure we are taking care of our community and keeping everybody at home when they need to be at home. Hand washing or sanitizing. So we're having kids hand wash or sanitize anytime they walk into a new room. So anytime you walk into a room, that's the first thing you do. And before you eat, that's the first thing you do. Similarly, anytime they leave a room, they're cleaning off their desks. So we have like cleaning materials in the classroom. So enter, clean your hands, exit, clean your desk. And that's sort of going to be our protocol. So we're making sure that those spaces are getting cleaned. And then I think my last two here are materials and pick up and drop off. And if you're thinking about why is that safety, because this is how we sort of limit having to share materials. It's also how we keep one group of kids separate from another group of kids. Because if you all know, we've got 1,200 kids on this campus. And so we've very carefully made the schedules so that they're not all hanging out at the same time. But that means you have to come pick up your child because otherwise there's nowhere for them to go. And so these things are really important. Materials to bring, they should bring their Chromebook to school. They're not going to be using it all day long, but they should bring a fully charged Chromebook to school. If your student does not have a school assigned device or does not have a device that you want them to bring to campus, please request a device as soon as possible. Laura, would you put that in the chat for me? Notebook, composition book, or binder with lined paper, nothing fancy right now. Pens and pencils, a refillable water bottle, any materials that they've been assigned that maybe they picked up, their novel, their expression supplies, etc., their expression sketchbook. They should bring a mask. They might keep a spare mask in their backpack. We will have masks on campus, but it's nice to have backup. And then lunch will be available to all of the students, but lunch will be available to all of the students, but if they don't access school lunch, they should bring lunch. Two other things you might consider. We're going to talk about lunch in a minute, but you might consider sending like kids with a picnic blanket or a towel or something like that. We will have lots of tables around, but also we see a lot of kids eating on the ground, and it's lovely and fun, and you just might want something to sit on. And then I'm going to encourage layers, especially in this spring season, because part of what we will do is have the doors and windows, the doors open of the classrooms as much as possible. Sometimes that means it's really cold in our classrooms, and sometimes that means it's really not cold in our classrooms. That's nothing new, but just a reminder that layers are good. And then pick up and drop off. Students can arrive on campus between 7:45 and 8:10, and students need to depart campus between 2:10 and 2:30. That's going to be our pretty standard time. Wednesdays might look a little bit different, but those are our time frames. And parents, I know some of you are going to be dropping off your child for the very first time on this campus, but you will have to say goodbye to them in the car or say goodbye to them across the street, because you are not invited onto campus at this time. Lunch. So as I said, each grade level will have their own lunch. We have these awesome red picnic tables that kids will be able to sit at, but they can also like spread out, have like actual picnics on the grass. We're keeping the cafeteria kind of a through line of traffic, so there won't be eating in the cafeteria, all outside. But hot lunch is available for all of our students, and so that's really an excellent thing to keep in mind. There's more on that page, but all right. So in terms of safety protocols, it seems like we had a couple of questions that are in the chat. One was, will there still be options for office hours for on-campus students? So that's a really good question, and I'm trying to figure that out. I don't have a good answer yet. I'm going to have to get back to you on that answer. I'm trying to figure out a creative way to have that. Really, that office hour time needs to be, that right after school office hour time really needs to be for our distance learning at home, our at home kiddos. But we're trying to figure out some creative ways to make like office hour time during the school day. If your child has never attended a day on campus, so their first period of their first day is going to be a total orientation. It's like, I'll greet them at the gate, and we have a full orientation with tours and everything, so they'll know where to go and they'll have everything they need. Hot lunch and breakfast are free all year, which is amazing. Is the lunch menu online? I have no idea. Mrs.
Yes.
Burial, do you know the answer to that question?
It is, and I'm getting the link right now. I'm about to paste it in.
Awesome.
We get all of our food services through Natomas Unified School District. So there we go. I just put the link in there, and you'll be looking at the secondary lunch menu. And they said that they should be updated it hopefully by next week. Because I think right now it just says supper. But they're supposed to update it.
There's all sorts of things on the menu. Other questions on safety or instruction?
There was one question about what are the current sports hubs.
Right now we have students who were part of teams last year. For the last couple weeks, they've been doing conditioning 1 day a week in those same groups. We kind of needed to test our system. And then Mr. Shane and I, after spring break, will be inviting more groups and new students to join that. And I don't have more information than that right now, but that they're going to expand. Trying to see. Oh, I see that one. Okay. All right, so then here's my sort of last slide. And this is one that I think that those of you that have had children in school for a long time, which at this point is everybody, we know that there's like an ebb and flow to the school year. And there's an ebb and flow in terms of your children's skills, and there's an ebb and flow in terms of their mindset, right? And so if you haven't had middle schoolers, if this is your first year of middle school, for example, I will say that there's something that happens right around March, and all of a sudden, all of the middle schoolers are obsessed with nothing but boys and girls and, you know, dating and all these things. It just is weird. It just like turns on in April and then it like turns off in May. It's every year, right? There's an ebb and flow to the year. Similarly with skill set, our kids come in August and they need a lot of support and like, oh yeah, this is how I do that thing. And that's normal. That's how we've built school and work around it. But we're doing something a little bit different this year. We're sort of navigating an August skill set. Oh yeah, how do I turn that paper in, and where's my seat again, and what room do I go to, and those sorts of things. But with the kind of energy and, for a lot of folks, tiredness of April. And so lots of things to think about with that. But here's just a few that I wanted to make sure we all are keeping in mind. Expect your kids to be tired, like physically tired, and need to go to sleep and need to take some resting time. They are going to need to build back their stamina. And that's a very real thing that we see every August, but we're going to remember that we're going to see it in April now. They got to find their stuff, right? Like, where's my backpack? Where's my water bottle? Oh yeah, do my clothes fit? Like, what am I wearing? Oh yeah, I'm not allowed to wear flip-flops to school. I have to have shoes with backs on them. Some of those things are really important for us to keep in mind. Have realistic expectations that it's not going to feel normal right away. So I had our web leaders on campus today. There's about 20 of them. And I asked each of them to give me one emotion. And half of them were like, excited. And half of them were like, this is weird. This feels weird. And that was after they'd already been here for an hour, right? So it's gonna take a minute to feel normal. Give space, give energy to get used to things. It's going to look different. They're out of practice. And I'm going to encourage, give space and grace to our staff as they adjust to this. I want to be really clear with the 5 days a week thing. We got this guidance on Friday afternoon. We made our decision at 10:30 this morning and told our staff at 2:30 this afternoon. So they've had all of 3 hours at this point to process and be ready. So I think just keeping that in mind as we move through all these transitions, we're trying to do everything we can to serve students as quickly as we can. But there's a lot of sausage making happening in the background. And so thank you in advance for recognizing that. And then, of course, reach out to the school if you need support. And that is always the case. And I'm just going to come back to, this is the picture, as I was talking about, of our teachers on the very first day where they were all working in person. And like, you know, I said, they didn't know how to get to the paper that was in the middle of the room. They didn't know if they could share books. They didn't, you know, they were all like walking around each other trying to figure out how to navigate the space. So it's gonna take time, but now they're good. Now we know how to do it. So after a couple of days, it was all normal. Okay, so yeah, questions. So Gabrielle asked to clarify. Actually, as of today, hybrid equals 5 days a week on campus right now. And that's the big change as of about an hour and a half ago. And so the options will be either you stay on distance learning or you're on campus 5 days a week. Those will be the two groups. In the email that I'm going to send out later on, not today, tomorrow, in the email that I'm going to send out tomorrow morning, it will explain this all again and say, if you are already in like cohort A or cohort B, if you've already chosen hybrid learning, we're going to just assume that you want to stay on hybrid learning. If you've already chosen distance learning, we're going to assume you want to stay in that. And only if our assumptions are wrong, only if you need to make a change to what you've already chosen, will you need to take any action. And then it'll explain what action you need to take. What other questions do we have? Okay, so what I think I'm going to do, and this is what usually happens, is I'm going to stop our live stream.